Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be reflecting on the year we had with reading in 2024. So let me pull out my reading journal and let's talk about the goals I made at the start of 2024 and where we're at the end. And then let's talk about the 24 books that I want to read in 2024. So I have at the beginning of my journal my reading goals right here. So the first one I had was read 50 books, which I did do. And then read a classic, which unfortunately I did not do, but here's to hoping that I do next year. Then listen to self-help books. I did do this, and I'm pretty proud of myself for the amount of self-help books that I listened to at the beginning of the year. I did fall flat towards the end of the year, but I am proud of how many that I did listen to throughout the year. Then read a new author, and I did do this. This was a lot of fun. Not only did I read one new author new to me, but I read multiple, and I want to continue doing that in the next year. And then read physical TBR. I feel really indifferent about this one because I read my physical TBR, but at the same time I didn't because it kept growing. So I feel indifferent towards this one. Maybe this upcoming year we'll do better at reading our physical TBR, but you know, sometimes it's never the case. Anyway, let's talk about the 24 books I wanted to read in 2024. I read 14 books on this list. I'm so proud of myself because there's only 10 books that I didn't get to. And I spent a lot of this year reading the Throne of Glass series, which took up a lot of my time. And then the rest of the time, I want to say I was in a really bad reading slump for the majority of the year. I don't know what was going on with me. Like, I almost didn't make my goal. If it wasn't for like reading Heartstopper and reading different novellas, I would not have made my 50 books. Like, I'm so positive of that, but I'm so proud that I only had 10 books I had to read to complete this goal, and hopefully I read a lot more in this new year. Let's talk about my flops of the year. The first one I want to talk about is Love in the Time of Serial Killers, and this book I listened to on audio, and when I saw this cover I was like, oh my gosh, this book is gorgeous. I can't wait to read it. And then the title, I was like, this is gonna be such a fun rom-com that has everything to do with serial killers. No. I was severely disappointed. First of all, none of the characters I liked. I was not attached to any of them, and when I'm not attached to a character, the book just kind of ends up being very slow, very boring to me, and that was exactly the case with this particular book. And the only thing that portrayed to serial killers was our female main character was writing her dissertation about serial killers. Like, she was obsessed with them. And I was severely let down because, again, I judged the book by the cover, and in this case, it wasn't a good book for me. The next book I want to talk about is I'm really sad about it, and I know a lot of people might be really upset about this because people love this author, and this is The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. And hear me out. When I first started this book, I was loving it. I loved our characters. There was so much banter, like their meet cute was so fun, and then we got into the book and it was just so much miscommunication and back and forth where she was like, I can be with you, but I can't be with you. I can be with you, but no, I can't be with you. Oh my gosh, yes, I can be with you. Actually, no, I can't. And it was so annoying to me. It was just, I was like, if this woman just sat him down and explained what was happening, we would solve all of our problems. And then don't get me started on the end of this book. There was a plot point at the very end of this book, and I mean like very end of this book, maybe I had 80% left, that was so unnecessary to the plot that I can't wrap my brain around why it was included. And maybe it's because she was writing other kind of spin-offs in this standalone interconnected series, but I just don't understand why it was included. It was completely unnecessary, and it honestly ruined the whole book for me. If she didn't include that plot point, I think I would have liked it more. But that, I hated that whole plot point. It was so unnecessary, and they did her best friend so dirty. Anyway, those were the books that didn't work out for me. Let's move on to more positive thoughts and talk about my top series of the year. The first series I want to talk about is Heartstopper, and oh my gosh, I love this series. I wouldn't have picked this up if it wasn't for Sarah Caroli. She talked about it so much, and I was like, you know what, I need something fast. I need a little palate cleanser, and this, oh my gosh, amazing, and I never thought I would be into like graphic novels, but reading this definitely changed my mind. I love Nick and Charlie so much, and the found family in this book, oh my gosh, I like, not only do I love Nick and Charlie, but I love their friends. I love their friend group, and it gets better and better with each book. And then another thing I love about this book is that it starts off so sweet and innocent, and then as you get on into the series, it becomes more serious and there's more heavy emotional topics, but it's handled so well that I really applaud this author for including them in something like a graphic novel. And I think it's really important for teenagers and preteens growing up to have something like this to read and to see and to be seen by. And I just love the series. I think everyone should give it a chance, and I just love Nick and Charlie. I love Nick's dogs. Like, I just love them so much. They're so cute, and like, they care about each other so much. Like, they're perfect. I love them. If you have been watching my channel all year, you know my #1 series this year is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I can't put into words how much this series impacted me this year, how much I thought about this series, and how much I will continue to think about the series for the rest of my life, because I don't think I will ever read anything like this ever again. And I know I am being dramatic when I say that, but the characters in this story, the plot in this story, the mastermind that is Sarah J. Maas is incredible. I literally picture her like in her apartment, and you know how people have murder boards in like CSI? Picture her having a murder board, but it's for all of her fantasy novels. Because how did she write something in the very first book, like the novella? And if you haven't picked up Throne of Glass, please start off with Assassin's Blade. Don't start off with Throne of Glass. Start off with the novella. I am begging you to start off with Assassin's Blade, please. But anyway, how did she write certain things and then like 5 books later, it comes back full circle and you're just like, excuse me, ma'am. That's how I felt. And I was like, her brain is so insane for that. She is so talented, and this series was absolutely incredible. And Aelin Galathynius is my favorite character like to ever exist. There will be no one like her. And honestly, all of these characters, I love them so much. And when I finished Kingdom of Ash, I was just like, what am I supposed to do now? Because the series is over, but I'm still so emotionally attached to all these characters. What do you mean I have to go on with my life? And do you know how many times I sobbed in Kingdom of Ash? So many, but honestly, please, I'm begging everyone to pick up the series because I will never experience a series like this again. And I will think about it for the rest of my life. Now let's talk about our top books of the year. We're gonna go from #5 to #1. None of these books are bad. I loved all of these books, but there was one that stole the show. So let's start off with #5, and that is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I love this book. I think it's so much more mature in Ali Hazelwood's writing than her other STEM novels. This was her first YA novel, and I just think that her writing was so elevated. You know, you have her fluffy rom-com books in the STEM world, but this one was so much more. The characters in this book had so much more of a backstory. They had so much depth to them, and I loved that. So you have Mallory and you have Nolan. They're both competing in chess competitions. Nolan is the #1 chess player in the world, and Mallory is simply entering the competitions because she wants to provide for her family. And Mallory is the sole provider for her 2 little sisters. Her mom is there, but her mom is not really present in the household, so Mallory takes it upon herself to take care of her 2 little sisters. So she is entering these competitions to get money to provide for them. And I just think like that was something we never have seen from Ali Hazelwood, because again, the STEM novels are so fluffy and light and you don't really get a backstory to our main characters, but in this one you have so much backstory and she handles it so well. And I'm really excited to see how Ali Hazelwood progresses as a writer, especially after reading this one. I loved it so much that I even went as far to make like Taylor Swift references to both of our characters and the relationship on my book Instagram. There's only one thing that I disliked about this book, and that was Mallory's sisters. Oh my gosh, they were so insufferable. Like, they were so mean and they were so annoying to Mallory when Mallory was the one that was taking care of them. It just bothered me so much, and that's the only thing I have with this book that I disliked. Other than that, I was really, really happy with it, and I know there's some back and forth on like social media about if this was good or not, and I'm telling you, it's good. The next book I want to talk about, I don't have physically because I listened to it in audio, and I listened to this book in one sitting. This book was so crazy. It was so good, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. If you don't know what this book is about a woman who does crime podcasts, and on her birthday, a woman comes into the bar and it's like, oh my gosh, we're birthday twins, and guess what? I have this crazy story you want to hear. And oh my gosh, is it crazy. And there's so many things that happen that you're like, do I believe this woman? Because she's kind of like off the rocker herself, but like, oh my gosh, I like don't want to ruin it because there's just so many things that happen in this book that I blew my mind. I immediately called my mom when I finished it. I said, Mom, you need to listen to this book right away because I need someone to talk to about it. So one thing that's really interesting about this book is if you read Verity by Colleen Hoover, it's a bit of a Verity situation. So in Verity, you have the manuscript and then you have the letter, and people are like, I'm team manuscript, I'm team letter. So in this book, you kind of have a podcast where you find out all of these secrets and then like the truth. And then you have at the end where she comes back and she's like, this is my truth. And you're like, did everything that I listened to and I believed, is that wrong? Or is she wrong? And it's one of those things where like when I finished it, I just had to sit and I had to like stare at my wall, and I was like, what is right and what is wrong? What is good and what is bad? I thought about this book for so long afterwards, and the production of the audiobook is super cool too because it's actually like her doing the podcast, but then like there's moments where a news person comes on and is reporting about like the crime live kind of in the podcast, and there's a certain production like element that I really enjoy. Like there's eerie music in the back and it has a whole different feel to the regular audiobook. It's really cool. I highly suggest this audiobook. If you're looking for something fast-paced, you're looking for something that like makes you question your existence, listen to this one. It was really good. The next book I want to talk about is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and it was just my Ali Hazelwood year. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. This book is about Rue, who works in her best friend's lab, and we have Eli, whose company comes in and is trying to buy out her best friend's company. And Rue is like, I can't have any attraction towards this guy because he's stealing the company from my best friend. So we have a little bit of enemies to lovers romance going on, and we love an enemies to lovers romance. And side note, I love Eli so much. He is so book boyfriend, like I want 12 of him. But anyway, I loved Ali Hazelwood's writing in this book. It is so elevated from all of her other books, and I just love seeing her grow and become more mature. These two characters, I loved their history. I loved the emotional depth they had, and it was such heavy topics, but Ali Hazelwood handled it so well. And I will say that this book has a lot of spice in it, but I don't think it was cringe. I don't think it was too much personally for me. I think that it really helped with the relationship. Like, it was important to have those spicy scenes to help them like connect and to help them grow as a couple. So I don't think it was too much, but I know that some people don't really like spice, so I want to throw that out there. But overall, I loved this book. I am loving Ali Hazelwood lately, and I can't wait to read more of her books in the new year. My second favorite book of the year is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this book is kind of interesting to explain. So basically we have Emma, and she marries her high school sweetheart Jesse, and the two of them love to take trips together. They love to travel together. And one year Jesse decides he's going to take a solo trip, and his plane ends up crashing at sea, and he gets abandoned at sea, and Emma has to deal with this grief, and she's like, he's coming back, and everyone's like, Emma, no. Like, so she's handling all of this personally, like, and on her own time. And then one day she decides, I need to move on with my life. Unfortunately, the love of my life is never coming back. So she kind of goes out and she reconnects with someone from her past, and she ends up getting engaged, and she starts living this whole different life than everything she thought she was going to be. And then Jesse ends up being found and is coming home. So Emma is dealing with battling these two relationships and going back to what she knew or living this new life that she made for herself. And one of the things that I felt was so important in this book was realizing that you can have different lives, you can have different loves, and you can grow and you can become a different person, but that doesn't take away what you had with someone in the past. And I think that's such an important message, and I read this at a time when I needed to hear that, and I needed to experience all of the topics that this book touched upon, because I will be so, like, I'll always be so fond of people in my past, but that doesn't mean I have a future with them. And I can be so fond of people in my current present day, but that also doesn't mean I have a future with them. Like, I think, again, it's like taking every single moment that's given to you and making the most out of it. And I don't know, I loved this book. I loved what it touched upon and how I felt reading it. And I highly, highly recommend it to people. It's just very emotional. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my gosh, it's time for number one, our number one book of the year. Are we ready? My favorite book of the year is 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book is so remarkable. It's so unique. It's so interesting. It has magical realism in it, and it's something that I've never ever read before. So essentially we have Clementine, whose aunt passes away, and she is set to inherit her apartment. Her aunt had always said that the apartment was magical and it could take you 7 years in the past. Clementine had never experienced it herself, but one day when she moves into the apartment after her aunt's passing, she wakes up on the couch and there's a strange man in front of her, and she, like, obviously freaks out. And then when she looks around, she's like, wait, there's no moving boxes here. All of the furniture is as if my aunt was living here, and she realizes she's 7 years in the past. It's such a crazy concept, but it's so interesting. And she essentially starts having this relationship with this man who is 7 years in the past. And obviously she meets him in the present, and it's again, a crazy concept, and I've never read anything like it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I loved it so much, but I also loved it because her and her aunt had this special bond, and her aunt was always like, seize the moment, seize the day. Like, one time she was talking about how they were in Paris and it started downpouring when they were in line for the Louvre, and she was like, we're gonna dance in the rain because this is what, like, you know, this is what decided to happen. So we're going to embrace it and we're going to make the most out of it. So essentially I took from this book, make the most of every moment that you are given, because you never know what could happen. So seize the day. And I loved this book for that element of it alone, but I also loved it because it was so different than everything that I've ever read. I just love this book so much. I think everyone should read it. I think everyone should experience it, and it was so good, and I can't wait to read more of Ashley Poston's work in 2025. Those were my top books, series, and some of the flops I had in 2024, and thank you so much for bearing with me when I tried to explain the plot of 7 Year Slip and One True Loves. Those books are so complicated to explain, so thank you. But anyway, I'm looking forward to reading in 2025, and I'm looking forward to hearing about your favorite books in 2024, so please comment them down below, and I will see you all in my next video.